You're listening to the Morphology Podcast. Thanks for tuning into the Morphology Podcast, aka Murph here to share interviews about biking experiences from cyclists who have pedaled to places all over. Each week, we'll get to know new people and explore new destinations to ride your bike. As you listen to these adventures, you may wonder, why haven't I done that yet? This episode, meet Johnathan Olson. He got a Peloton a few years ago, and like most people, he started out doing a couple workouts a week. Now, if you haven't heard of Peloton, it's a brand of stationary bike that has built-in features that allow you to join live cycling events. So even though you're riding your bike alone in your home, you're with thousands of other Peloton riders at the same time. This strong community is what got Johnathan hooked. He now rides every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. And get this, he recently spent the weekend on his Peloton doing what's called a Pelo-fondo, and he was able to log over 600 miles. 600 miles in a weekend. Amazing. He has an interesting story that might give you a little bit of motivation. So here's my interview with Johnathan. All right, I would like to welcome Johnathan Olson to the podcast. Hey, Johnathan.
Hi, Kathy. How are you?
Good. So I'm sure that you know that this is a bicycle adventure podcast. And today's topic is really interesting to me because it's kind of an area that is a bit gray to me, and that's the whole world of Peloton. So I appreciate you coming on today to talk about Peloton and your story. And I think listeners are going to be pretty motivated maybe is the right word, but at least entertained. So I appreciate you coming on.
Sure, Kathy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I already said it, but we're on to talk a little bit about Peloton. And for those who don't know what Peloton is, it's basically a form of indoor cycling. It's a specific bike that you purchased, and the brand is called Peloton. So I know there's many people out there that ride their bikes indoor, especially in the wintertime, whether it's on rollers or on a trainer. So Peloton is just one other way of cycling indoors. But I'm thinking, if I did my research correctly, that you also use an outdoor bike. So you bike both indoors on Peloton, but also outdoors. Is that true?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. So before we get into the world of indoor cycling, do you want to tell the listeners where you live and maybe describe if there's a cycling culture there?
There absolutely is. I live in northern Illinois. I'm about 50 to 60 miles west of Chicago.
Oh, okay.
And we have lots of trails mixed with kind of a crushed limestone trail to asphalt trails. And then we have a lot of road cyclists as well. And those paths will take you all the way up in Wisconsin, and they'll take you all the way down to the end of Illinois, pretty much. So hundreds and hundreds of miles. You would think Illinois would be flat, but surprisingly, there's a lot of hills and a lot of 12 to 15 degree grades that kind of make it challenging. We ride outside as much as we can. Obviously, winters here get pretty cold, so then we bring out the fat tires, reduce the speed a little bit, get warmed up. But yeah, I mean, as far as outdoor adventures, I'm outside as much as I can.
Mm-hmm. And you're in Illinois, I'm in Iowa, so I'm assuming that the seasons are really similar and weather's really similar. So are you into like endurance riding, gravel riding, or are you more of a commuter when it comes to outdoor cycling?
Currently, I kind of transposed into more of a road cyclist and a commuter.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was younger, I was obviously more into the adventure, and I was gravel, downhill, mountain biking. But, as time rolls on and you hit a few trees, you kind of start liking the smoother rides a little
Yes.
better. So now I'm a commuter, and I live not too far away from work. I'd say, different routes will give me different rides, but the shortest route is like 5 miles,
Okay.
and the longest route on average is like 20 miles. So I'll try to ride my bike as much as I can, to work, to
Mm-hmm.
commute. And I don't have the exact miles for you, but last year I I don't think I drove a car more than 2,000 miles for, the months that allowed me to ride a bicycle. So I was pretty
That's,
proud of myself.
yeah, that's amazing. And
Yeah.
commuting, I don't get to commute anymore because my office is in my home, but um, the act of commuting, once you get into the habit, once you're on your bike and getting on your way to work, to me, it was no big deal. And as your workday goes on, you quickly forget that you've already been on your bike 5 or 8 miles that morning. And then for me, it was a huge like stress release when you get off work that you get to just like kind of meander your way home and look at, for me, it was like farm fields and cows and be out in nature instead of worrying about traffic. So I
Oh, yeah.
loved commuting.
Yeah, me too. I mean, just like you said, it's the first few times it's always hard getting into the habit, but once you get a couple weeks behind you, it's just you just clip in and go, and you don't think about it,
Yeah.
because once you start thinking about it, you procrastinate, and then you're like, oh, it's too cold, it's too windy. But
Yeah.
if you just clip in and start riding, 9 times out of 10, when you get to your destination, you're happy you did. You're like, oh wow, that was a great ride.
I would
I got
agree.
fresh air. It wasn't that bad. It makes the day so much better,
Yes.
in my
Yes.
opinion.
Yes, I agree. So, looking at Illinois, I have done quite a few rides just across the border from Iowa. So, I know that area really well. And then I did my league certified instructor training in the heart of Chicago. So, I got to experience that as well. But do you have any like favorite places that you ride a bike?
Yeah. So once a year, my dad and I, we participate in the Ride Across Wisconsin
Oh,
event.
raw, right?
Yep, the
Oh,
Raw Ride, and this year would be our sixth time, I believe. The whole route is 225 miles,
and it's
and
for most people,
we do
it's,
it in one day.
yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
say it's meant to be done in one day, correct?
Yep. Yep.
Wow.
But over the years, they've changed the routes a little bit, and last year was actually a big shocker for us because I would say, oh geez, I would say about 50% of the ride was on gravel.
Oh,
And of course, we had not very good luck with the weather because it like downpoured the day before. So all the trails were just super muddy
mm,
and wet. And then as the ride started, it kind of rained and drizzled throughout that day, and it was cold. And this was in August, but
mm.
for whatever reason, that the weather was just super cold. Yeah, so we made it to about 175 miles, and we called it because it was like already 4 o'clock. It was still raining, and we were freezing cold, and it was just like, I think I think we're good.
the
So we
the fun
bagged it.
the fun factor had been eliminated.
Yeah. Well, plus we still had like 50, I think it was like 50 miles of trails to go, and it was getting dark, and there were people wiping out all over all throughout the day, just big mass pile-ups and bloody elbows, and it's just like, oh, okay, it's just we're gonna call it.
I have a group
So
of friends that did raw, this, the exact same ride that you're speaking of, and they called it as well. I think they had, 50 or 60 miles to go. And several of the people in that group woke up the next morning, went back on the trail to finish it because they had that, sinking feeling of, I got to say that I did all of raw.
I know actually it's funny because we did the same thing. We didn't finish, but we talked about it for a while to go back
Yeah.
that next day, clip back in because we're like, man, we're so close. It was just another 75 miles and we would have been done. And
Yeah.
75 miles sounds like a lot, but when you're doing 225, it's, it's really not. And
Right.
it's like,
But when it's freezing cold and muddy and gross, that 75 miles is
oh,
a long ways.
geez, that's the mental part.
Yes, yes.
I mean, a lot of people, it's like, oh, it's physically hard, yes, but the mental part is another challenge. And
Yeah.
it's like, here it's in August, so we're trying to get acclimated with heat exhaustion, throughout the summer and, not really getting prepared for being cold.
Right. Yeah, that's not the expectation for August.
Right. So
Yeah.
we were just in a shock and we're just
Yeah.
like, oh, it's just not worth it. But hopefully this year we have a nice tailwind and 70 degrees and
Perfect. Yep.
yeah,
Sounds perfect.
I know.
So speaking of the whole, mental state and, when you do endurance and whether or not you think so, I definitely consider raw an endurance ride because you're doing, hundreds of miles in one day. I think
Hmm.
that's a great segue into getting into the indoor cycling. And because I think for me, I have an indoor trainer. I do more of Zwift, which is, kind of I don't know what you would call that, a virtual gaming system
Yeah.
that where you ride your bike. Different than Peloton, but there are many similarities. And it's definitely a mental game when you're not exploring the community or on a trail. You're literally in your living room or in your garage or in your basement on a bike.
Right.
So let's
A
get,
bike that goes nowhere.
yeah, a bike that goes nowhere. So let's get into like the whole indoor riding and, Peloton hasn't been around forever. So do you kind of recall maybe how you got into Peloton?
Yeah. So I was riding outside and then in 2019, I got the Peloton as a gift from my dad. And I was like, okay, cool. I got something to do in the wintertime. And, I was doing a couple rides and it felt good and, it's good exercise. And then all of a sudden you get it linked up with your Facebook account or
Mm.
a social media account. And then within that, you have a whole community, which is that's how Peloton is so popular, is because once you get involved with the communities, it's kind of like a whole different family, kind of like sports,
So,
and you'll have challenges that they offer, like the Power Zone Pack Challenge, and then they make other challenges on Facebook that make certain graphs and like a half pipe challenge or all that stuff, which is basically just a series of rides. And then when you link them all together, the duration of the ride or your total output of that ride accumulated all together will make a certain graph. And people enjoy viewing that. It's like a reward. It's
yeah.
like you know, it's a goal for them to achieve.
So
So
can
it's
we go? I just want to go really basic with what Peloton is quickly. Obviously, we already mentioned it's a stationary bike that sits, in one spot in your home.
mhm.
And then, and now I'm basing it on TV commercials, but you have a computer screen kind of in the bike, right?
Yeah, it's
So,
attached to the bike. It's like a big tablet.
okay. So then if you're actually riding the bike, can you ride on your own or are you riding as part of a class?
No, you can ride on your own.
Okay.
They have different levels you can do. They have scenic rides where you can just say, I'm going to go ride Huntington Beach,
Oh, okay.
and I don't know how long those trails go, but I think you can ride them for a really long time. And it's a
Okay.
visual. So it's kind of like you're pedaling and you see the screen moving as you pedal, and you
Ah,
can kind of like look at all the different sceneries and stuff like that.
okay.
They also have an option where you can just say, I just want to ride the bike, and it'll be a black screen with a timer, your power,
Mm-hmm.
your cadence, all that, your heart rate, and you can just have a TV on instead and just do that.
Okay. And then when you do like the classes, because I have many, many friends who are Peloton junkies and they're always excited when they get shout outs by the instructor or if
Oh
they
yeah,
get to a certain level of classes. So do you want to speak about that briefly?
Yeah. So they have on-demand rides, which you won't get any shout outs because those are just like watching recorded TV,
Mm-hmm.
but you're interactive with it. So when they call out a zone three or a certain cadence, you hit it and you can see it on the screen.
Okay.
And the big thing is the live rides. So they have a schedule, and when they host a live ride, say at like 9 in the morning, it you basically tap on the screen and you join the live ride, and it's a live feed. It's like you're giving people high fives on the screen,
Oh, okay.
and they can receive them and then they give them back to you. So it's an interaction with all the riders.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's 2,000 riders on that live ride, you can sit there and high five, all your followers or all the people in certain in groups and stuff like that. And then yeah, if it's your uh, like 1,000th ride or 2,000th ride, a lot of the times the instructors will call your name out and congratulate you and say,
Nice. Yeah.
congratulations, this is, so and so's 2,000th ride. And when that happens, people record it, they post it on Facebook, and
Right.
then you get more people high-fiving you and telling you congratulations. So it just goes further than just the bike. It goes into your actual life, and these people will travel, from New York to California to meet each other and create friends and groups, and it's a great adventure to join.
Oh, for
Sure.
sure. Yeah. And so your father buys you a Peloton. You started
Hmm.
out with like, oh, I'm going to, just get fit and ride this occasionally.
Hmm.
At some point, your mind clicked that this was much more than just a casual fitness form, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what they do is they show you a calendar, like a month view, and every day you do a ride, you get a blue check mark. So at first you're like, oh, I got a blue check mark, and then you got another blue check mark, and then all of a sudden you get like, oh, I'm on a 10-day streak,
Yeah, I got to
and
keep going.
then oh yeah, and then it's like, okay, I don't want to break my streak, so I'm going to just keep going. Next thing you know, you got a full month, and then you've never missed a ride in a year, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's addicting. So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool because it's like you don't have to kill yourself to get that blue dot. You can just clip in and do a 15-minute cool down ride which basically is just like a zone one, zone two,
Mm-hmm.
because Zwift has zones, right?
Yes. Yep.
Like yeah. So you can just get your heart rate at a zone one or a zone two and just spin the legs out after work if you've been
Mm-hmm.
sitting in the chair all day and you got your blue check mark, you know. So that part is very addicting, and it makes you feel good that you did something for yourself.
Yeah.
You took some time out, and you're like, you know what, I'm just going to take 20 minutes. I'm going to just spin my legs, get my heart rate up a little bit, get a little sweat, and then I'm done.
Yeah. And,
So
a 20-minute easy ride, even a 15-minute is, it beats sitting on the couch watching TV for half an hour. So,
yeah, well, like I said, it's just a psyche thing. It's like
yeah.
you finish something for the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
Sometimes at work you don't get to finish your projects. They get pushed aside or you get interrupted or something like that. So the Peloton just gives you a chance to finish a mission.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm gonna just take 20 minutes. I'm gonna finish this. Timer starts. Timer stops. I got my check mark. It's done. You know,
Yeah.
it's amazing how much better you feel when that is applied. And then, of course, they go further with it now, and they do meditation classes and yoga classes, and they kind of took it to the whole next level, which
Mm-hmm.
is it's really great. So you just turn the screen around, you can pick whatever class you want. I think they have dance classes now and all sorts of stuff. So
Nice.
it's cool.
So, okay, and speaking of different things that you can do, there's also something called, I believe, a Pelo-fondo. Pelo-fondo?
Yeah, Pelo-fondo.
Okay.
And that was created, I want to say, in 2019 as well, 2020. so it's fairly new. And Pelo-fondo is a great challenge for yourself. And it occurs at like basically every other month.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there is no minimum miles or effort. It's whatever you want to do. So if you want to do 10 miles for one day or 10 miles for 2 days, that's up to you. And it's always an option to do Saturday or Sunday, or you can just do Saturday or just Sunday. And another thing that's nice about it is say you did 25, you pledged for 25 miles,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you did your 25 miles on Saturday and you felt really good still. And you're like, you know what? I have time. I'm going to do another 10 miles and make it 35 miles. You can go ahead and change that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There's no limit. So that's what I love about it. And that's how I obviously accumulate my miles to so many, because I always go by how I feel. I
Mm-hmm.
always say, I'm just going to do 100 miles for the weekend and just go at that. And then, after I get 100 miles, I'll just be like, okay, my
How do I
boys
feel?
are,
Yeah.
yeah, how do I feel? I feel good. I have no health issues. I'm happy to be down here. I'm not making myself, it's my choice to be down here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not making myself do it. And I'm just going to do another, 2 hours or 3 hours. Doesn't matter how many miles. It's just whatever. And then before you know it, you got 600 miles.
Yeah. I was just going to say, when are you going to tell the listeners exactly how many miles you did at a Pelo-fondo?
Yeah, that was so I kind of grew into it. I didn't just jump into it, say, I'm going to do 625 miles. All the, I've been doing Pelo-fondo since 2020, and they've always been pretty big, 225, 300,
Wow.
400, stuff like that. The 625, it happened just like I described earlier. It was a cold month. It was raining out. The whole weekend was yuck. I have two boys I raised, and they're older, but they were busy. The house was empty, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna ride.
Yeah.
I had no plan, um, and I just clipped in and just kept riding, and I didn't push myself. That's another big thing, is like you can't go at it on day one and just try to, you know, max out, be zone 4, because you're not going to make it on day 2.
Right. Plus, it's
You
probably
know,
not as enjoyable.
it's not. Yeah, you don't want to make yourself miserable. So, as time goes on, as I clip. Oh, and that's another thing, is when I do these big, big rides, is I usually clip in at 11 at night or midnight, let's say, because that's the only way to get the time needed to do these huge,
Wait,
huge rides.
so you're saying like at midnight is when you will start your ride?
Yeah, yeah. So I'll clip
Oh.
in. I'll clip in at midnight. The group of us will clip in at like 11 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
on Friday night, because that's Eastern time, midnight, and we'll start there, and we'll ride for as long as you can. By the time it's 7 in the morning and the sun's just coming up, you already got, if you're doing good, you got 6 hours of time on your belt.
Wow. Okay,
So
so let's just say that well, I don't know, you probably did, but if you go that, first 6 hours, are you getting off the bike and like walking around or taking a break or sleeping?
no, yeah, I don't sleep. usually these usually these weekends, my sleep is, my Garmin watch will tell me I'm very poor and I need to take a
Yes.
30-day recovery. But I break, but I try not to break no longer than 15 minutes, because obviously when your legs stop, and if you break long enough, your amino acids and the lactic acid and all that stuff starts building up in your muscles, and once you start pedaling again, it's very hard on your system to get
Right.
that flushed out.
Yeah.
So 15 minutes are my little breaks. So it's usually every 2 hours, like every 90 minutes, I'll take a 15-minute break, refill my water bottle, maybe grab a banana, apple, try to keep the sugars natural. And then I call them like my blocks. My blocks are like typically 100 miles or every 5 hours. I'll have a a bigger rest, which is like 45 minutes.
Mm.
So basically like a lunch or a breakfast. I'll try to sit down. I'll do a stretch. I'll consume lots of fluids,
Mm-hmm.
fruits, peanut butters, stuff like that. And
I'm
then,
trying to think, I'm sure you know this because you seem like somebody that probably documents a lot, but the amount of calories that you would burn
yeah,
is
it's a
probably
lot.
crazy.
It's like 35,000 calories, I want to say.
Whoa.
Um,
Wow.
yeah. So when I do these events, I'll usually keep my Garmin on, just on like an activity. So I'll monitor my heart rate and everything throughout that whole cycle. And it's usually about 35,000 calories when I'm all said and done with the weekend. 17,000 calories a day.
That's
But you can't actually eat that,
right. I was like, I don't think you can even eat that.
No, surprisingly, my diet, like I don't really binge eat, or I don't consume any more than I normally would on a normal day, other than the fluids. I'll push the fluids a little harder,
Mm-hmm.
but as far as eating, it's just kind of the same stuff. I try to keep it with natural sugars and just yogurt, lots of yogurt, peanut butter, some plain bread. Stay away from certain lunch meats, but yeah.
Probably sodium type deals.
Y-
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I try to, I mean, naturally, I'm always watching my sodium intake. I don't know why, because a lot of people say it's good for you, but
Mm-hmm.
in other ways, I've felt that it kind of makes me feel not so good, you know, like bloated or
Yeah.
puffy the next day. It just doesn't make me perform as good as it does without it. So, I try to monitor all that the best I can with with how I feel. If I feel dizzy or dehydrated, I will actually consume something with a lot of salt,
Mm-hmm.
maybe some soup or stuff like that.
So,
But
so it sounds like you're super in tune to your body. So it's not like you're walking into this fondo, without knowing your body really well and having a background of, all right, I've done this before. I know what to expect from my body.
oh yeah, I know my limits, and I'm always like looking out for how I feel, even my muscles and stuff. If my knee is starting to act up a little bit, I'll back off. If,
Mm-hmm.
you know, sometimes on day two, it's like you really have to watch how you start and stop when you're pedaling. Like if you're starting to stand up and it's day two, you really got to be careful and lean into it. And you don't want to just like jerk your legs, because it's just a high risk factor of, you know, pulling a muscle, or,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, doing something with your ACL, which I've done all of those. So it's learning from your mistakes for sure. Listening to your body and just doing the best you can with what you got.
Right.
That's what
So,
it is.
so if I'm hearing you right, a fondo, Pelo-fondo
Oh,
is it 48 hours? Is it a Saturday and a Sunday?
yeah, it's 48 hours.
And then
Um,
when you did, so you literally rode it 625 miles, right?
yes.
So in a 48-hour period, how many hours were you on the bike?
I believe it was 28
Oh,
of
wow.
28 riding time. Yeah,
Wow. And,
yeah.
you said you didn't start that weekend saying, I want to do 625 miles. So once you were done, like, how do you recover from that?
You mean once I was done Saturday or Sunday night?
Yeah. So let's say you go to work let's say you go to work Tuesday, right? So you've given your body a day off.
No, no, I was at work on Monday.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah,
So you finish this, you maybe sleep a little bit, you get up the next day and you go to work?
yeah. Well, I do. I
Yeah.
know a lot of people do take Monday off, just like if they ran a marathon or something like that, they usually
Right.
take a day to recover. But I don't know why. I just never feel the need. I needed that. So, and I do try to finish on Sunday. I don't go all the way till midnight.
Right.
So I'll try to be done by like 7 to 10 ish, at night. But yeah, it is. It's always Mondays are always hard going to work. You're just like a zombie. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
you can't think straight. You're trying to put words together, and it's like, but everyone who knows me knows what I do, so they just kind of laugh it off, and
Yeah.
you know,
And you
but
did, when did you do this, this first one?
the 625, I think it was in October of
Of,
2022.
okay. So October of 2022, you spent 28 hours and you rode your bike 625 miles. Do you think you'll ever do that again?
I well, I didn't do 625, but just this weekend I did 606.
Just this weekend?
Yeah,
So same sort of
just
thing. It was another Pelo-fondo?
last night at 8 o'clock, I just finished. Yeah,
Whoa.
606 miles.
Oh my gosh. I, this is amazing, Jonathan. Amazing.
So that this time it took me 26 hours, and again did the same thing. I Friday night, or if you want to call it Saturday at midnight, I clipped in, and I did the same thing. I'm just gonna clip in at midnight and see how far I go, and I'll assess it from there on Saturday. You know what I got and where I feel I can what I feel I can handle.
Right.
So
So, let's see how to answer this, how to ask this question, but my experience on an indoor trainer, the rides are different than being outside. And probably more talking about the weather, the elements,
oh yeah,
all of that. Do you
yep.
think that you could ride that mileage outside in the same amount of time?
Only if it was all downhill.
Oh,
It's funny you brought that up because I was just talking to some colleagues about that, and they didn't even bring it up. But I told them, I'm like, I know for a fact that there is no way I could ride 600 and what 600 miles period in the time frame I did on an outdoor bike. There's just no way
yeah,
because first of all, you have to be alert and you have to be aware of your surroundings, which is mentally challenging.
right.
You have to support yourself and balance yourself on the bike, which takes a little bit more core work than sitting on a stationary bike. And then you have your elements of wind,
Mm-hmm.
cold, sun, beating down on you. It's just a lot of elements mixed together. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I do the raw ride, which is 225 miles in one day. And sometimes that is my limit. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I could clip in and do that again the next day. Like if I would have to turn around and go back,
Yeah, and do the same thing
I don't
again.
know. I mean, maybe on a really good day. And like I said, if the wind was on my back the whole time, possibly. But yeah, it's just when you're on a stationary bike, the thing, it allows you to relax. There's a lot of times when I'm sitting there hours and hours on the bike, like, so, I'll spend time just closing my eyes,
Mm-hmm.
or I'll be standing up pedaling a lot. So like, I'm kind of like in the elliptical motion, and I'll just be kind of, closing my eyes and just focusing on my strides and, my weight distribution and stuff like that. But on an
Mm-hmm.
outdoor bike, you can't do that.
Right. Yeah.
There's just too many things going on.
Yeah, there's
So,
the stress level alone is so much different. Like you just mentioned, being able to, you don't have to worry about balancing that much, and you can
hmm
jump off the bike and run to the restroom if you need to, or go grab a banana. Like it's just,
yeah.
there's a
Oh,
lot of
that's
comforts.
yeah, and that's another thing. Like I ride, like I told you before, I do ride outside almost every day. I
Mm-hmm.
try to, even after I'm done riding on the Peloton. So my morning will consist of I'll ride the Peloton for 45 minutes, then I'll jump off and I'll jump on my road bike and I'll ride to work.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so I have a very good like grasp of the difference between stationary bike and a road bike. And I know if I do the same exact ride on each bike, just naturally my heart rate is going to be it's typically about 15% higher just on a regular
Outdoors.
bike.
Ah, yeah.
Yep, because you have to hold on to the handlebars. You got to be alert. You got to be aware. Your guard is up.
Mm-hmm.
So it just takes more energy to ride outside.
Amazing. I'm amazed that you have the energy to do both. And you probably, actually, I read or listened to another podcast that you did where you're on your feet all day at work as well.
Yeah, yep. I
Wow.
I average 12 to 20,000 steps around that on average.
Of
So
walking or of being on your
yeah,
feet?
yep, yeah, just walking around at work. And yeah, I work kind of like in not a factory, but it's like the job shop, CNC job shop. So I'm constantly walking around and
Mm-hmm.
bending over. It keeps me in shape,
Yeah.
but
And
that's part of the endurance. Yeah.
I did take a peek at your Strava account, which is public. We'll let everybody know if they want to keep their eye on you. But here we are, coming up towards the end of April 2023, and you're almost at 6,000 miles already.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy in a good way.
Um, yeah, it is. And I try to do as much as I can. Any moment I have, I try to be outside.
Yeah.
Like you're from Iowa, so the winters are long, cold, days get short. So once it starts, the sun's coming out. Like we had summer maybe a week ago. Now it's back to winter. But
Yeah. For like a day.
you
Yeah.
know, yeah. So I'll be on the bike, moving around, taking walks. I'll do light jogs and stuff like that. So, and I try to record everything. It's all on Strava.
Yeah. You're an open book
Yep.
as far as your fitness goes.
Yeah.
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 And I guess, part of that too is, like we mentioned earlier, knowing your body. But do you have any, I don't know if there's people out there that think that they can bike 28 hours in a weekend or do over 600 miles or even do raw. But for, maybe just people in general, do you have any like nutrition or hydration tips that you could pass along for people who are into endurance or want to get into endurance?
Yeah. The easiest thing to do, I think, in my opinion, is if you want to go endurance, is you keep your caffeine levels at a moderate level. Like, so don't be tapping into the energy drinks, the Monsters, the Red Bulls, whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
because that just makes your body a roller coaster. You want to have a clean diet and good sleep, of course. So you want, rest, good diet, hydration, and then you want to just ease into it. You don't want to just say, like you keep bringing it up, like, oh, I'm just going to go ride 100 miles today and I haven't ridden a bike in 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Right.
You got to build you got to build your muscles up, and you got to let your body know what you're going to do before before your big plan.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to, like, if you're going to run a marathon, you got to start with a walk first and then introduce to a jog. And then, it just takes time. You just can't jump into things, like, unless if you're 16 years old, maybe. But
Yeah.
most of us, it's like you got to break yourself into it.
Yeah.
You got to adapt. You can't just jump in and swim.
And
So
now, okay, so now that you've done over 600 miles, twice that you've mentioned. I don't know if you've done more. Are you going to try and beat that 625, or are you going to just kind of let it happen naturally?
If I do, it's just I like the way I like the way I approach it. If it happens, it happens.
Yeah.
If I, if I tell myself I'm gonna ride 600 miles this weekend, you know what? It raises the stress level already.
Mm-hmm.
So already into that weekend, now I'm already stressed because I have a quota I have to meet, or I'm expected to do this, and it's already starting to become harder. You
Right.
know what I mean? Versus just like, you know what? It's weather's kind of crappy. I'm just going to see what happens. Am I going to do another 600 miles? I don't know. It's very hard. Uh, Physically, it's challenging, but it's also very challenging mentally. You have to want to do it.
Right.
You know, you have to want to, because 12 hours, okay, yeah, you could probably handle 12 hours, but when you're by yourself and it's going on hour 18 and you're hungry and you're full of sweat and you got rashes and just things aren't going well. And if you don't want to be there, I guarantee your psyche's just going to be like, nope, I'm
Yeah.
checking out.
Yeah. And usually your brain overrides what you're
Oh,
physically
yeah.
capable of doing.
Yep.
And to be
Yep.
honest, I don't know that I could ride 12 hours. Like, that is a long time. I'm trying to think if I guess I've done a 3 hour Zwift ride. And that was like, I changed my kit a couple times. I got
Hmm.
up and walked around. And I think I was probably still a mess for a couple of days after. So I'm like, kudos to you.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, that's why I call them blocks. I look at it as a block. So, for every block, it doesn't matter whatever you set it to. It can be 70 miles, 50 miles, but you just kind of set it and say, okay, I'm just going to get through block one.
Yeah.
And you get through block one, and then you kind of, I look at it as a reward. I'll reward myself, and I'll have a nice meal or something like that, and then I'll go on to block two and
Mm-hmm.
just keep plugging away at it, and then eventually, like I said, it makes a big difference when you don't have a, a set goal at the
Right.
end.
Right.
So if you just eliminate that, I'm going to ride 600 miles, and you just eliminate that and say, I'm just going to ride, and whatever it is when I'm done, that's what it's going to be. That makes a huge difference,
Mm-hmm.
because it's more motivating, because you're doing it at that time what you want to do, not you're not like driving towards what you need to do. It's just a better way to approach it, I think.
Well, yeah, you're a very motivating person. You can feel it, in your energy. I'm sure people are listening to this, first of all, saying, I don't think I could do this, a long distance endurance ride. But there may have been a time when you thought that, and you
Oh yeah.
just take, tiny steps that you've built yourself up to this point.
Just this weekend was that time.
Mm.
I clipped in, like I said, I clipped in on midnight on Saturday. Day one was pretty good. It was long. I got 300 miles. It was good. So I think I went to bed at, I don't know what time it was, not maybe 9 at night. And then I woke up at 4. I clipped in on Sunday, and I could not hit my power mark, where I want it to be. So
Mm.
I have a goal of a wattage that I want to have an average wattage of such and such,
Mm-hmm.
and I was not hitting it. And I mean, I was hitting it, but it was very hard. And no matter what I did, I was just struggling to get there. And I was texting, messaging some of my colleagues or my friends, and I'm like, I don't think this is going to happen.
Hmm.
Like, this is 2 hours into Sunday, and I am like, it's fatigued. It's not like I'm just exhausted and I can't do it. I have the energy, but my legs are fatigued, and
Oh, sure.
I can't spin.
Mm-hmm.
I can get over 80 RPMs for the life of me. So actually, what I did was I said, you know what? I'm going to just reposition my seat. I'm going to push it a little more over the axle, so I'm directly over, and I'm going to lower it a little bit. Use a little bit of a geometry change in my legs and
Mm-hmm.
try to use different muscle groups. And just that doing that was enough to get me to hold my wattage. And then, like I said, my cadence wasn't there. I couldn't go over 80. So I would say more than half that day, I was pretty much standing up and I was
Wow.
using it like an elliptical. And my resistance was high. My cadence, I believe on average was like 55, 60.
Mm.
And I was just kind of just stomping away, just hour after hour, just on a kind of climb ride. But I did it,
Yeah, I was
you
gonna
know.
say, and you did it.
Yep, like I said, I just took it each ride at a time. And that's another thing I like about the Peloton is these classes. So you can just ride and just set a timer and ride.
Mm-hmm.
But having the classes, and these aren't live classes, some of them are, but I'll just say, oh, you know what, I'm going to do a 90-minute block, and I'll set up 90 minutes. I'll take this 90-minute class, and it's just kind of like it's it's a mini goal. You're giving yourself like a little goal, and it's only 90 minutes. I hit this, and I'm going to see where I feel after that ride.
Mm-hmm.
And then that 90 minutes gets through, and you're going to say, okay, I'm going to do maybe just another 30-minute ride, see how I feel.
And it's kind
And
of probably a little bit of a distraction too, where you're like,
it
oh,
is.
I'm interacting. Even if it's a recording, you're still interacting with the bike.
Yeah, they're like little like waypoints.
Hmm.
It's exactly what it is. It's like a waypoint. So as you're following the map to your goal, you're like, okay, I'm gonna just go to this waypoint here, and I'm gonna get there, and then I'm gonna just and obviously the shorter the class gets, the busier your mind gets, because you
Mm.
can do 5-minute classes, and there's challenges out there that are like you have to do a 5-minute class, then a 10-minute, and another five, then a 10, then a 15, then a 20, then a five, and it's like you need a spreadsheet to like figure this stuff out.
Right.
So you end up being more mentally stressed than you are physically, because you're like, oh my God, what am I even doing?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm chasing these graphs around, and I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. So, and then before you know it, you got 6 hours done, and you're like, wow, that didn't feel like 6 hours. But
Wow. And then you go to work on Monday and say, yeah, I just biked 600 miles on my Peloton this weekend.
yeah, well, that's kind of becoming a common question for me. Everyone, when they see me Monday, they're like, oh, how many miles did you bike this weekend?
Do you want to share with the listeners maybe your Peloton account name and I'm assuming Strava as well?
Yeah, so my Peloton hashtag is Bumpski, so Bumpski. And a lot of people ask me what Bumpski is.
Yeah.
And, when I signed up for Peloton in the beginning, I changed names a few times, like, obviously my name, Johnathan, and it's kind of boring. And then, just washed it around a little bit. And then Bumpski kind of stuck. And Bumpski comes from when I was younger in high school. I used to go to a ski hill, like that was really close by, and that's all we skied were moguls,
Mm.
bumps, because the hill was only 260 vertical feet. So
Oh, Midwest,
there
a
wasn't
Midwest
much.
hill.
Yeah, there's not much you can do. It's either you're going to ski bumps, or you're going to do the half pipe or the terrain park. And, I skied the bumps. So I picked up the nickname Bumpski. Everyone would call me Bumpski, and it just kind of stuck with me. So I brought it back when I signed up to Peloton, because it's a sport, and it kind of clicked. I'm like,
I love
okay,
it. Yeah.
yeah. And then my Strava account is my name, Johnathan Olson, with the hashtag Bumpski at the end, just so I kind of link those two accounts together.
Yeah. And
And
yeah, definitely people who are into Peloton should, check you out and see your stats or follow you along or ride with you or whatever it is that they can do on Peloton.
yeah, high five each other, and it's great community. I try to remember everybody, but there's a lot of folks on Strava and Peloton. But it doesn't matter, who you are. It's when you're riding at the moment. And just like the last night, I collaborate with this group on Peloton, and the last 2 hours of my night was pretty emotional because you're pretty exhausted. You want to be done. You're almost there, but not quite. And then all of a sudden, you just get flooded with all these high fives and these people just
cheering you
supporting
on.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they'll even change, like they have you can put like little hashtags underneath your name tag, and people will put like, keep going, bump ski, we support you, biggest fan, blah blah blah. And it's just really emotional. Of course, it's more intense because I'm going on hour 26, and it's like, okay.
Right.
And I think I had the new Top Gun movie on at that time, and it was just ending, so it was just like super intense.
Yeah.
But it was pretty cool.
Wow.
It's an experience.
I am so appreciative that you came on the podcast to kind of tell your story. And, I'm assuming, maybe you can answer real quick, that you probably ride your bike every day, whether it's indoor or outdoor.
I do. I have to have that blue check mark.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, and even if I travel, I mean, I'm not crazy enough to actually, I've seen some people like bring their Peloton with them. But,
oh, boy.
I do question the the hotels, if they have a Peloton, if they have an exercise room, stuff like that. But now, that Peloton offers like the on-demand feature, like on your phone. And now you can even, like, if you go for a walk, you can turn it on and it'll track you and your heart rate and all that stuff. So now it's kind of like you're unleashed from the bike. You can kind of do things other than just the bike.
Yeah.
But yeah, every day I gotta do something, either it's core or a walk or clip in and ride, but I try to ride every day for sure.
Wow. Well,
and, yeah.
Hopefully you are, I know you've motivated me, but motivating people out there that are listening to know that you got to start somewhere. You don't have to do 600 miles on your first Peloton ride or your first bike ride of the season, but you got to start somewhere.
Yep, I certainly didn't. I mean, I was supposed to do a century ride when I first started, and I could not finish it. It was, I think I tapped out at 75 miles. And then, from there I just did another one, and eventually now I'm just up to 600 miles.
Yeah.
But even still, on bad day, or not bad days, but not every weekend I can do 600 miles. Just because I'm here now. Next weekend, I guarantee you, if I tried it again, I would not be able to do 600 miles.
Yeah.
Because I'm already fatigued from, this weekend. So
yeah.
You got to listen to your body. You got to just take it day by day and take care of yourself, most importantly. And then you'll get there,
Definitely. Wow. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And we'll be cheering you on from afar to see maybe your next 600 miler or even your next 10 miler.
Thank you, Kathy.
You bet. Well, listeners, that's it for this week. Email me at murphologypodcast@gmail.com if you have a topic or the name of a cyclist you find interesting. Support my podcast at patreon.com/murphology and visit both my Facebook and Instagram pages for daily entertainment. I have more great episodes in the pipeline, so I hope you continue to be a Murphology podcast listener.